When we start our conversation tonight, we're going to be talking a little bit about quiet, noise, things like that tonight. And our first question, and you can feel free to start answering this if you want, type out your answers, is where do you go? Do you have a place that you go when you really want things to be quiet? So we'll get to that in a minute. Feel free to start answering. And I believe John has maybe an announcement or two.
Yeah, definitely. A uniquely different experience here. When we started this a year ago, that was kind of the thing we tried to talk about a lot and say a lot. We hope that tonight will be a uniquely different church experience for you. And actually, a lot of churches now are streaming because of the situation, but we still believe this is a uniquely different type of church setting where we can engage with you in participatory conversation. I get all excited and geeked out about it because I really, and because I like it, but also because I believe that God truly speaks in our conversation. Like He has something that He's given Susan, something that He's given Justin, something that He's given all of you. Yes. And if it's just one person yabbing on, we miss all that other stuff that God gives, you know? So that's not really an announcement. That's just what I do when Justin moderates. I do the sideshow pastor thing over here.
I think it's good. It's all true.
But speaking of non-judgment, too, actually, Pastor Kerry loved your comment. Nobody cares. We will not be judging you. And that was actually in our chronicle reading for today. In Acts chapter 7, 8, 9, Acts chapter 10, we read today about that idea that we don't, Peter had this whole, you can eat smoked pork now. God said it's totally fine to eat barbecue. And then he went and talked to a Gentile, and we're not going to judge Gentiles. This is an interesting connection, Justin. So thank you for the beautiful segue into the announcement about chronicle.elivinghope.com.
That's how we wrote
Pastor Kerry, who is our online host tonight, with a whole slew of other people. Look, I got Sabrina, I got Bonnie, Holly, Terry, Tammy, Melissa, Carrie, Pauline, Sherry Mormon, Dan Carl, Sherry Lintoller, Jennifer Schull. I mean, all kinds of people on. And we're inviting more. Dan already shared the post. Who's going to be the next share? We're challenging every person who watches to share because we believe it contains the hope of Jesus, right, in our conversation. Anyway, Pastor Kerry is going to type chronicle.elivinghope.com. You can get on there, see all the passages we're reading. We're reading through the book of Acts in our series Turning Points that we're going through right now. And I also put a little video up this morning. There's a new video from my morning enumerations. Is that a word?
It is now.
It is now. I just made it up. It sounds kind of mathematical. Enumerations. No. Anyway, my ponderings from this morning with very little coffee. So if you want some deep mysteries of Acts chapter 10, clue in, watch that on chronicle.elivinghope.com. Let's see what else. Check out Facebook page. It's got our whole schedule. We are here tonight, 7 o'clock. Yep. Tuesdays, Thursdays at noon, prayer and devotion with myself at my home. And then we have Fridays, Faith Factory Day. Saturdays, the blog. Let's give it up for Pastor Kerry. Yeah. Come on, everybody. Give it a little hand clappies. Put your favorite gift hand clappy on there. Pastor Kerry has been rocking it. Awesome sauce blog. Great stuff. So read those suckers. I think there's 5 or 6 of them now. She's just doing great. That new one comes out every Saturday. No pressure, but she has not been late yet. So well done, Pastor Kerry. Full-time job on staff here at Living Hope as well. She's killing it. So check that out on Saturday. And then Sunday, 10 o'clock is worship. 10:30, I'm live sharing what God's been laying on my heart. And then Sunday, we have a re-air of an archive message. So all that can be found on Living Hope's Facebook page and our website. Go to elivinghope.com and keep giving too. Man, I just got to mail a check away today for $300 to someone who had lost their job and needed some encouragement. I've already mailed out thousands of bucks to people who just need help and need encouragement. One of my great honors. And that is because of your generosity. So thank you for that. Thank you for continuing to give. elivinghope.com/give. You can make a real impact in the lives of others. Speaking of money, I have 2 other really exciting things. People keep giving food to go money. Yeah, thousands of dollars, like $5,000 here and $3,000 here. So we're still feeding kids. Food to Go is our ministry here at Living Hope. Feeds over 250 kids on the weekends when school is in session. We've been working with the high schools to get the food to the neighborhoods. And we have been given so much money, in fact, that we are working on the Food to Go team, not me. The Food to Go team is working on food for summer. So to continue feeding kids during the summer. So Living Hope, you all are a part of that. Super excited about that opportunity. So continue to give. elivinghope.com/give. Be faithful in that way. It's a wonderful thing. So that's all my announcements, I think.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, we didn't really introduce ourselves.
Yeah.
You know who we are. But in
No,
case
we
you don't,
introduce.
I'm Justin.
I'm
That's
Susan.
it, yeah.
And I am John. Hello.
There you go. You've been introduced.
Dave Crafton's on. Brooke Jewell's on. Hello.
Man.
Sandy Snell.
Love
kinds
seeing
of
all you
people.
guys.
Man,
That's
we got
really cool.
claps for Carrie. You guys are super interactive tonight. Now share.
I can
Click
feel the
share.
energy. This is
Share.
good.
And here's the
Loves,
thing about
laughs.
Carrie. She is doing a great job with the blog, but also every time that we're live streaming anything, she's been doing, well, I don't know about every time, but she's
every
been
time.
doing, she's been doing such an amazing job. Carrie, you've been doing such an amazing job
Yes.
of quickly being able to like keep up questions, post things out that we just happen to say. Like, the quickness that you're doing that with, it's not going unnoticed. It's been super helpful to people, and it makes an impact, and I know you miss being up here too. And I just want to know you're making a huge impact doing what you're doing right now too, and we appreciate it so much.
Yeah.
She's been
Actually,
doing
one
a
more
great
story you
job.
just reminded me of, real quick.
Yeah, go.
Tammy Clark. I watched your watch party video just today. Tammy Clark attends Living Hope. She's on our church board. She did a watch party of my Sunday morning message, I believe it was, and I've seen her doing them over and over. She had a group of friends. I can't see any of the people you're talking to, Tammy, but I see comments and comments and comments. And so what Tammy is doing is gone a step further. We want to encourage you. It does kind of disconnect you from the main conversation, but wow, what an opportunity to invite your friends to your own watch party and then talk about faith together. Tammy, I'll be praying for you as you continue those and reaching out to your friends. And I want to encourage you, what an awesome way to engage in your faith conference, to share hope with people who are connected to you. Great stuff, Tammy. Well done.
So tonight we're going to be talking about noise and about quiet and silence.
I'm familiar
they
with
kinda
noise.
Go, yeah, well, like most of us are. They kind of go hand in hand. I think noise and quiet. So first question, and I think we've already seen a couple answers maybe, but first question, we'd love to hear from you. Is there a place that you go when you just want things to be quiet? Like, do you have that availability? And if so, where is it? I'm not just looking like, yes, I do, but where do you go if you really just need things to be quiet? I was thinking about this for me. I a lot of times will think the car, and it doesn't get me complete quiet, but if I'm driving somewhere, a lot of times I won't do the radio or anything else like that, not because I'm amazing for any really cool reason, beyond just like I don't have that many times where it's just actually I'm at a place where it's quiet. And so I try to take advantage because I love quiet. I really do. And so I try to take advantage of that. So kind of the car driving for me.
Brooke Jewell said, by the way, shout out to Brooke Jewell. I think I did say Brooke, but you're throwing me off because usually you're Rat Fink on here, Brooke. So I'm selling out your alter ego. But Brooke Jewell says, I have a 5-year-old. There is no quiet. Yeah. Heather said, laugh out loud moms equals bathroom.
Yeah.
When I want quiet, which is always, I go home. That's some of the responses online here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know when, really every place we've lived, I've found water somewhere, whether it's going to the beach or whether it's going to a lake or something, because it's not totally quiet, but it's quiet enough, and listening to the waves, and that just is always really, really therapeutic for me. But no, I love, in fact, that's one thing I miss about not having the commute. I don't miss the commute. My commute right now is walking down the stairs to my basement. But the commute, driving to work and driving home from work, that same thing. You are by yourself and you just have this decompressing time, which I don't have right now. So no, the car is definitely a thing for a lot of us, I think.
Yeah. Fishing has been one for me. I just take the boat. I got a little fishing boat. Just go, and I've had to go out by myself because, the whole social distancing thing. So just going out to Caesar Creek and just being myself in a boat. It's just really, I did it before the quarantine too. Like I'd go and, write my sermon, just sit on the lake, and just write my sermon for the week. It's like a really cool.
No, it is really cool.
Something about water.
Yeah, well, I was going to say nature in general, right?
Yeah.
Something about being in nature and being away from other sounds is always kind of helpful, I think. Okay, so those are some of the places that maybe we go to be in quiet, or try to, if we can. But then once you're there, how do you feel about being in silence? Like not just yourself, but like actually like not just you being silent, but being in silence. How do you feel about that? Or maybe if you're not a real feelings person, as I am not, what do you think about that? What do you
Oh,
think
jeez.
about being inside, like
You're
in
totally
silence?
deflecting, Justin.
So you
How
can
does
either
it make
answer
you feel, Justin?
either way. How do you feel about being in silence, or how?
I don't think Justin wants to talk about how it makes him feel.
You know, it totally depends on the atmosphere.
That's true.
Like if I'm in the middle of the woods and it's sunny and beautiful and you can hear the wind blowing through the leaves, it's cool. If it's dark and kind of spooky and misty and whatever, that's creepy, and I don't feel as good as I do when it's sunny. But there's a lot of, I love being in silence, but it's not really silence because the birds can be really noisy.
Sure.
Seriously noisy. Like,
Sure.
have you
Like
heard them
utter
lately?
silence. Yeah.
They're crazy.
I think it's the idea of just no outside presence of your, like, I don't know, that doesn't make sense because birds are outside presence, but I don't know. I think there's just a difference. Like
Yeah.
nature doesn't seem like noise to me. It seems like maybe it's not always about the audible connection.
Sure.
Noise can
Sure.
be a lot of things.
Yeah.
Right, stress.
Well, that's
and
true.
All that kind of
True.
stuff.
A lot of
you know.
distractions, visual as well, and
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
smells and things like that. And I was just thinking when you talked about the birds outside and being outside, like in the wintertime, you know, we moved here from Florida, and I loved it there, and I didn't think that I missed 4 seasons, but I did. I love 4 seasons, and in the winter, it's just amazing to go outside because the snow is such a sound absorber. Oh, it's amazing. It is, because you can go outside and just be and not have all of this at you.
Yeah.
Some of the folks say bathroom or bedroom is a great place. Shut the door. I usually have music, which is on. My problem is too much quiet, Terry said, which that was part of my
Interesting.
thinking was like, there's times I love quiet and there's times I don't like quiet,
Sure.
you know, depending on the situation. My house is never quiet, Beth Rogers says. I end up staying up way too late, enjoying the quiet or in the car. I love being in silence because it's my only way to recharge. Yeah, some good
I used
stuff,
to stay
man.
up till
Great
midnight just so I
conversation,
could have
guys.
some quiet time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, like in that idea of either people, you know, you hear about people that get up early. I say people because I don't do this, but like people that either get up early or stay up later to where they are the only person that's maybe up in their house so they can have some silent time. I think that's probably a great practice, right? And something I should probably look into.
The first snow of the year.
Ooh.
Oh, yes. What's the wonderful show that we love? Heather, I'm having a brain fart right on live TV. Oh, it'll come to me. Heather will say it on here, but there's Lorelei is her name. She loves when the first snow because you can hear it. It's the silence of, yeah. Somebody help me out with that dumb show. How have I lost my mind?
I watched the episode of The Office not long ago.
Yeah, it's not The Office, but
where they talk about watching Armageddon. This is off topic, sorry, but like where they talk about watching Armageddon on New Year's Eve, and Dwight cries. It's Dwight and Michael but he's like, no, it's because it started snowing exactly at midnight on New Year's Eve. That's why I cried.
it's over.
Anyway, that's what made me think.
But it's
when you said this, the first snow.
The silence, yeah. or the
Okay,
sounds
so
of the snow.
silence. Somebody threw out Gilmore Girls. Is that what
That's
you're
it.
looking for?
Oh, thank you.
You're
Oh, it's
welcome.
like everything just fell into place
know why
in
I
my
said you're
mind.
welcome.
You know.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
John can now. He wasn't going to be able to focus.
I wasn't. I kept like, what is that show?
Thank you.
So here's
Oh,
what
I lost my mind.
Here's what we find, right? We find that Jesus, if you really follow much of what Jesus does, you really start to see that there's not just one instance, but many instances where it talks about any of the Gospels talk about Jesus going off by himself. Maybe just going off by himself. Maybe he goes off into the wilderness. Maybe it references him going off to pray. One of the examples is really in Luke 5 when I was looking around, and this one kind of struck me a little bit because in this passage, Jesus had just started his legitimate kind of I'm not being, sneaky about all of this anymore ministry. He started being a little bit more public about everything. And the writer Luke says news about Jesus was spreading even farther, and large crowds were gathering around to hear him and to be healed. Which, when you're just starting out this ministry and you want to spread the word and whatever else, logistically, you would think this is definitely what you're all in on and you're excited about. And not to say that Jesus wasn't, but then right after that it says, but Jesus himself would often, and I thought that was interesting that it said often, slip away to the wilderness to pray. And so he had to kind of slip away because people were following him around because it was ridiculous what he was doing, just amazing to see what he was doing. So people wanted to follow him. So he had to very intentionally try to go off into the wilderness away from the interaction and the noise of his everyday kind of ministry, I guess, and just really his everyday life, to be able to get into something that was more silent, to be able to pray. And I thought that was kind of an interesting thing as you look at Jesus doing that. I think that says something, one, right? Because that's a lot of times we're looking at Jesus as an example. So I guess my question about this, and any of the many other times, like I said, there's plenty of other times where he's going off by himself and praying. So slipping away into the wilderness is what it said, right? But does just being by yourself always equal silence? We want to hear from you. Definitely answer that question.
Yeah.
For you, just being by yourself, does that equal silence? And then why would you say yes or no to that? I'd be interested to hear.
I think it depends on your state of mind. I think sometimes if you're by yourself, it's very loud because you're thinking an awful lot and you're hearing these ideas and stuff, and it can be overwhelming. So sometimes people need to be around other people just so they can focus on reality instead of what their perception is of reality.
Brooke shared on here, I thought was really interesting. She said, I like getting away and being by myself because it's so nice to just be instead of being needed.
Ah.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
somebody always needing something, which I imagine Jesus probably experieed in that
Yeah.
situation too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like,
Don't you think it would have been exhausting? I mean, all these people
Oh,
all
man.
the time coming on you, and the faith that they had, believing that he would heal them, but yeah, that's exhausting, and you do have to
the
get away.
constant pressure of
Fame.
Right.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
And then what do you do with that? Yeah.
In a lot of situations, I wonder if Jesus felt like, man, am I just like a big vending machine here, healing people?
Sure.
Because over and over again, they kept missing the point of like, why is he here? And
Yeah.
You only want me for my power.
Yeah, right. But he went away to reach out. I think it's like to be with the Father. I think that's interesting though, because Jesus never went away to be alone.
Yeah.
He always went away to be with someone, right? To be with the Father.
Yeah.
And I think there's something in that where our solitude really is a meeting place, not necessarily
Yeah.
I don't know. That's an interesting thing to think about.
Well, and that's ultimately where we started with when we sat down now way more than 7 weeks ago and talked about this. It was us talking about what are some barriers, right? When we were planning all this out, what are some barriers to interacting with God, right? And having a relationship with God. And this was one of them that we came up with, was this idea of noise. And we are really great about filling our lives, I think, with noise in a lot of ways. And I love what you said, and I might be getting ahead of myself. I don't know. We'll find out, I guess, won't we?
You'll navigate the journey.
I think both of you kind of, John, I think reading from Brooke, and then Susan, something that you said, both were interesting. One is, I just need to be able to get away by myself so I can just be. And I think that's such I resonate. That resonates with me. I don't resonate with that. It resonates with me very much. I can understand that. And then, Susan, you mentioned something about how when you are by yourself too much, though, there are times that your mind can almost run wild. Yeah. And it's almost like a runaway train of, unhealthy thoughts that can start running. And you almost need to be around people to reground yourself in some way
Or
in
distract
what
your own
reality is.
mind.
Well, sure, yeah, maybe.
That's what Bonnie said. No way. Her brain screams sometimes when there's no noise. It just goes crazy.
Well, we're so conditioned to doing that I think when we're by ourselves, we're thinking, what am I missing? What am I not doing? And you preached a few weeks ago, I think, about being human. What was it? Oh, we need to be human beings instead of human doings because
yeah.
we're all about doing
Yeah.
instead of just really being.
It's hard. I don't think we really know. I don't know how to be sometimes.
It's hard.
Because it drives me crazy.
Yeah.
The moments that. But then it's like I move. I don't know about you all, but there does seem to be a threshold, where if I can get past. And something that helps me actually is I've learned to stop fighting the screaming of my mind, So when I go to be quiet, I'll journal what I'm thinking about and try to get it out, and kind of move beyond. Like if I just get it out of my head, then there seems to be a space beyond that where I can then start to just rest in that moment. It's like almost you empty your brain a little bit, and then what's there after, I don't know.
Well, don't you think that's why we have writers and novelists and artists and composers, and I mean, because they're
just got to get it out.
getting it out.
Yeah.
That's what Mary said. I loved what she said. I went outside one evening after dark, and there was no noise. I sat there and listened to the silence, and you begin to think about God, and that can be very inspiring.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So good. So here's what we are hearing, right? What we're hearing is and I think we've all said it, and you guys have said it out there in several different ways. There's outer noise, right? But there's also inner noise that we have, right? And there's both things are happening to all of us,
Yeah.
pretty much all the time. There's an outer noise and there's an inner noise. And I think one quick quote that I thought was super interesting in listening to some stuff preparing for this and thinking about noise. Somebody said in one of these podcasts I was listening to, but you can accidentally find yourself in a silent place, right? I could accidentally walk into a room and there's nobody in there and it's silent, right? But I have to get away from noise. That actually requires my purposeful movement. And I think that when he's talking about that, he had also been talking about that difference between outward and inner noise, because we have both. So I can accidentally find myself in a place that's quiet, but I can't necessarily purposefully get away from or accidentally get away from inner noise. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. All right, so here's my next question, I guess. What do we really experience when we get into silence? And there's a follow-up question, so don't get too type happy, or get type happy. I don't care what you do. So what do you experience when you are in silence? Because I think there's kind of two avenues for this. So one is, we kind of talked about this before the camera started, everything that's down underneath in your soul, again from a quote from this guy I heard, comes to the surface in silence. So I guess my follow-up kind of paired question with that is, when you're experiencing silence, you yourself, when you're experiencing silence, what things down in your soul come to the surface?
Oh, geez, Justin.
We're getting kind of
Yeah, I'm leaving.
So when you find yourself initially in silence, what are those things that are like the most surface on your soul? What are those things that come up initially?
See, that's a gamut of things. And once again, I'm going back to it depends on your state of mind. Sometimes I find this amazing inner peace that is just wonderful, and I revel it and I love it. And other times there is that panic again about, what's going on, what I'm missing, what is happening, why is it so quiet, this is the calm before the storm kind of thought.
Yeah.
Sure.
I do. Definitely. I experience that too. It's just depending on my circumstance. Like if I'm looking for the silence, which there are times when I do, then I feel like I'm more okay with it, and I'll push through because I know what I'm trying to get to, like the point beyond. It's those like unexpected moments where I want something else to be going on, and it's interesting though. I wonder if you've ever experienced this, but the times that seem most productive, and by productive I mean the times where God like does His stuff in me the most, are during the unexpected moments of silence, not my planned ones. I don't know why that is. I think it's just because God likes to be annoying, But really, it's those break-in moments where I got stuff I got to do, and He breaks and says, "No, now's the time." And maybe it's just part of me learning to discern when I need it most, because again, it is. I think I'm drawn to what Jesus was doing there. It wasn't. It wasn't He was overwhelmed, so He had to get off by Himself. It was overwhelmed, so He had to go be with the Father.
Yes.
There's a completely different thing.
I think it's prioritizing.
Yeah.
And we don't always, we think what we have, this is very, very important, this is hot, I need to do this right now. And God's like, no. No, you don't.
Yeah. A lot of times we're moving so quick in our non-silent times that we almost utilize our silent times, or at least I do, to catch up on thinking about what I have to do next or what I've just done. Yep. You know what I mean? Like we're moving so fast all the time. It's when are we really sitting down to think about what we're doing? But again, I'm a little bit in that thinking realm. Not
what
feeling
bubbles
it,
up
as you
to the
pointed
service, By the way, if you're just joining us, I've got several people that just hopped on. We're so glad that you're here. Hello, Clinton, and the other folks that have jumped on. We're talking about noise and solitude, silence, and how God fits into the midst of that. So thanks for joining. Click share, like, or love, and interact with the conversation. But yeah, back to your horrible question. What bubbles to the surface?
How do you feel?
Let's be authentic a little bit here, folks. What bubbles to the surface when you get in the silence and solitude?
And, one of the things that they talked about is those things that are usually right underneath the surface that come to the surface in our silence are things that are typically more negative almost in an initial way. So it might be fear or anxiety. I think anxiety makes sense because whatever we're kind of worried about is going to
worry is a word that comes to mind to me.
Yeah.
Like that's what I end up journaling about most of the time to get out. It's all the worries.
Yeah.
When I'm sitting there, I think about this.
Anger is thrown out there. I think that was, to me, I thought, man, well, that's an interesting one because all of a sudden I find myself in quiet, and how quick am I to think about the person that maybe has angered me even if they didn't do something intentional. Like that's where my mind may initially go, is to some of these, more negative feelings. And so then, of course, if you're feeling negative feelings, you most of us don't prefer that. So then we try to get away from that, and to get away from that, we get away from the silence. Keep telling us, though. I would definitely want to hear. Keep telling us what things come to the surface for you as we talk about the second thing that happens when we get in our silence. So first thing is, all the things that are right underneath our soul, come to the surface in silence. The second thing that can happen if we're willing to kind of endure that and push through that a little bit is that we can hear from God, right? And so to be able to hear from God, we a lot of times need to be away and in silence. Like you were saying, Jesus going to a quiet place away from others, not to be by himself and solitary, but to actually be with God and to be able to hear God. Yeah. And I think that's super interesting. One of my favorite verses, little stories, is in 1 Kings 19 with Elijah. And he's running away, whatever. I'm not going to get too far into it. But he's basically running away. His life's on the line, and people are after him to kill him. And he wants to hear from God, and so he's up on this mountain, and it says, like a great and strong wind. God says, hey, go stand up here on this mountain. I'm going to pass by. Be ready. Huge wind comes. It actually makes the mountains like crumble to pieces, like parts of the mountain are falling down because the wind's so strong. But then it says, but God was not in the wind. And then after the wind, there's this earthquake, right? So now there's crazy wind, then an earthquake, but God was not in the earthquake. All right? And then after the earthquake, fire. I don't know how that happens, but then there's fire that passes by, but God was not in the fire. And then after the fire, the sound of gentle stillness. And I think that's so hard to get to, but the sound of gentle stillness. And then he started talking to Elijah. Right?
I love that story.
Yeah. Me too. What is it that you love about that?
Because I think sometimes we grow up thinking that God is omnipotent, God is all-powerful, God is huge and mighty and almighty, and you would expect him to be in the earthquake or the big strong wind or the fire. I mean, he was in a fire and a pillar of smoke and everything, stuff that we had heard before, but the still small voice, because that is so true. I mean, he's everywhere, and everywhere isn't just the big things. Everywhere includes the small things too, and I love that story because of that. Because then, when whether you're a small person or you believe that you're this insignificant person, or when you start looking at just where we are on the scale of things, when you see how big the universe is, God is in that still small voice, and it's cool. I don't know. I love
something
that
just came to my mind as you're reading that scripture, because I've heard that forever and love, it's just encouraging. But something just kind of struck me, like the wind and the earthquake and what was the fire. If you think about it, those are all momentary events, right? So they happen and then they go away. But you think about life goes on around you, and everything that we experience in life in this realm of time are momentary events. Work, the busyness, the hustle bustle, even the pandemic we're in, all this stuff are temporary things. But if you strip all that stuff away, there's one remaining constant that is always there. Think like silence doesn't go away. It's just there being covered up by these temporary moments. Isn't that kind of a cool? I was like, oh my gosh.
That's kind of neat.
God isn't like, there's silence right now. If we would stop and uncover, it's there. It's like the eternal presence of God underneath everything. And it's the only thing that's always there. All these other things are temporary,
Yeah, I
really
love
cool.
that. That's really, really
gosh.
good. I mean,
Good
it's like
I
your
could preach that
pastor
on
or
a Sunday
something.
morning, dang it. I'm like, come on.
Write that down so you don't forget.
I know. You in like a month, everybody will forget about it, and then I'll land it again and be like, no, wow, how about that one?
So, but let's take that Old Testament story and then move it to the New Testament too. And there's the story where Jesus. Oh, I'm sorry, my
No.
There
There goes Susan again, stealing the thunder.
Yeah.
She always does that to me, Justin.
No, it just made me think of when Jesus is talking about, knock and the door will be open. God is there.
Yeah.
Jesus is there all the time. It's up to us to open that door. It's up to us to go. Oh, it's hard to talk about because sometimes we're so bad at doing that. And that's why we do get anxious. We do worry. We do have that fear because in the moment of all this craziness, sometimes we forget to go open that door and remember that God is there.
Brooke said, right on with what you're saying, Susan. Brooke said, I think God speaks to us in the stillness because our lives are so hectic that we never really let down our walls until we are in that silence. That moment where we can finally peel back the onion and find God in the middle there. That's good.
So here's what I don't want us to do. I don't want us to think that God only talks to us in silence, because we've also talked on here, and if you read your Bible and whatever else, and just an experience, you know that God can talk to you through other people, and God can talk to you through a sermon, and through a song, and through through an activity. God's not real pigeonholed into one thing. But I think the thing that we're quick to not access is silence and intentional quiet. And I think that we're worse off for that as a people for not doing that. And so you might be out there, and here's what I don't want us to miss tonight, is that you might be somebody out there that's thinking, I don't even know how to do this. So what I'm really counting on us, and really counting on you guys out there for who do practice quiet and silence, is to give practical tips. And we're going to kind of walk through some questions here, but I really want to hear practical tips for people who may be watching tonight and thinking, I don't know how to intentionally quiet myself and hear from God.
And you're right, we do live in a world unlike any other, where we have so much vying for our attention.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I woke up this morning and I picked up my phone. I literally rolled over in bed, unplugged my phone, and looked at and again, the reminder that this stuff isn't just about audible things. It's about stuff. Maybe vying for my attention is a good way to think about it, but it's hard.
Okay, so real quick, what is, and definitely feel free to answer this, please do. What are practical ways that you find time to be silent with God in your life? So if you're somebody out there that practices that, we want to hear from you, because there are people out there that may be watching this that haven't done that, or they don't know the first thing about how to intentionally go and find quiet time with God. What is it that you do to get into a spot where you're quiet and you can slow yourself down or your world down enough to be able to enter that time with God?
So I did this yesterday, and of course then I felt guilty because I looked at the clock and I was like, oh, I missed Facebook Live with the prayer and devotion at noon.
I noticed you not being there, by the way. You were missed. Not that that's not pastoral shame. That's just I missed you.
I watched
you
it
were
back,
missed.
though. But we were outside. It was a beautiful day, and so we ate lunch on the patio. We left our phones inside. And we just sat there and we ate lunch and we talked to each other, and then the kids went inside and Thomas and I just sat there, and I just remember leaning back in the chair and closing my eyes and just, you could feel the sun, the birds were beautiful, you could smell the flowers, and it was just, it was nice. And I don't do that often enough, but I think maybe that was an intentional trying to just be.
Yeah. Somebody said phone alarm, waking up early, right?
Yeah.
Dan says 5 a.m.
Brooke just said that too. Before everyone else wakes up and or after everyone else goes to sleep, I turn everything off and put my phone on silent.
Yeah. And I think those are really...
I hear intentionality there in those two.
Yes.
Make time for it. Schedule that sucker.
It has to be purposeful, because important things almost never happen by accident.
Yeah,
right?
Somebody, Carrie, would you write that? Because I'm going to steal that later, too. Important things never happen by accident.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
And so it might be things like, hey, go take a walk, right? Without headphones in that you're listening to music or whatever. Go take a walk somewhere where they're not going to be, wake up earlier, stay up later, both things that people have said already. Get some earplugs or noise-canceling headphones. Weirdly, me and my wife have been doing that a lot here lately.
Yeah.
Because that's
noise-canceling headphones.
We can't stand hearing each other talk, so we keep... No.
It's the truth.
But we're all home, and so to be able to put those on and be able to have quiet, even if people are around, that's invaluable. And they're not super expensive. Go find some.
Yeah. A lot of early morning stuff here that's really good.
Another thing for the morning... there's this app, it's called First 5. So this is with the phone, but you can set that as your alarm. And then really what the intention is and why it's called First 5 is that when your alarm goes off, you spend time, your first 5 minutes of the day with God, because there's a short devotion that you can go to, and that's being intentional about just having some time.
That's so good. Okay, so we're quiet. We've intentionally woken up early at 5 a.m., or we're intentionally up late. We're out on a walk. We're quiet. Again, please tell us what you do. What how do you interact with God, though? That's one thing to get silent. Anybody can get silent, right? I mean, it's hard, but anybody can get silent. But then what if somebody out there is watching and rewatching this on your newsfeed because you shared it like we asked you to, and now they're wanting to know, okay, but how do you interact with God? Is there a certain prayer I have to say? What do I do? Is there stuff out there that you do that you find helps you connect with God? And what does that maybe look like? Or what does that feel like or sound like? Or how does that work for you?
So something that I've found, again, the journaling thing, like if I'm sitting down, right, at a place, I'll journal. And then I'll find that after I kind of brain dump, that my mind still will connect to things. But I've learned to like recognize that, because I've never heard the audible voice of God. I've never been lucky enough to hear like God speak to me in an audible voice. Yeah. But I have had deeply connected times, kind of post-brain dump on my journaling, where then my mind will connect to something, and I've learned to recognize that as like God pointing his, like touching me or nudging, or I'll think about something that I'm feeling or going through, and I'll kind of recognize that as a nudge. Like, once I clear away all the stuff that I know is my stuff, and I sit for a while, then there are and even when I don't have a journal, if I'm just sitting and going through all that kind of exercise of getting it all out, but then not fighting the movement of my mind either. Because for me, there used to be a time when I'd sit in silence and it'd drive me crazy because I'd think about something and say, "Oh, great, I failed. Like I can't sit here for 5 seconds without listening to God."
Sure.
But then I've learned to lean into that because God's, if His Spirit is dwelling inside of me, it stands to reason that He sure can speak to me through the motives of my heart and the thoughts of my mind. And I've learned to lean into that, like. Now, how do you know whether it's God or not? I don't know. I'm learning like all of us, but there are times where I know, like, okay, that like God pointed at that and nudged me there.
I know one of the things for me. Well, John, kind of read some of your responses, and thank you so much for responding. One of the things for me is I have to consciously sometimes remember that I don't have to fill the void of silence, right? So I don't have to constantly. There was a time in my life where I felt like I had to constantly talk if I was praying, right? It was me in my head talking constantly at God. I couldn't let there be silence or stop. I had to be the whole time. Well, nobody wants to be in a conversation where they're just talked at the whole time, and God probably included. I'm sure God loves to hear from all of us, but God also wants to be able to talk to us back.
I was going to say, that's more of a lecture, not a conversation.
Yeah, exactly. So at some point you have to shut up, right, and let God talk to you, and that might mean just where your mind happens to lead. And to me, there's sometimes that, and it seems maybe like I'm a little bit crazy, but it seems like as I'm talking to God, I'll pause, and clearly before I could have constructed some sort of a response, I'm feeling that response. Again, it's not like somebody's talking to me in the room and it's out loud or anything like that. That'd be amazing and helpful if God would start doing that with me. But it is quick, and it's quick to the point that it's not me just constructing some kind of response. And I think that's interesting.
We have so many great responses.
Yeah, let's hear some of them.
Tony said, "I stop during prayer and stop and wait in silence for the Holy Spirit to speak to me through Jesus, and I meditate on what He says." Heather says, "I like the Soul Revolution app. I get a scripture every 60 minutes, and I try to think about what each means to me.
That's cool.
Settle into His peace and just listen. The Jesus prayer is really good. Lord Jesus, Son of God, have mercy on me." Said over and over. So you take deep breaths. Sherry says, "I struggle with connecting with God." Or should I say listening to God? I have no trouble talking to Him, but sometimes I don't think I take the time to listen. And it's actually, I've been thinking about another exercise that I've shared in church some that may be helpful for you. And I wonder if we could just do it.
Yeah.
Would that be okay? I figure we're talking about silence and solitude. Would it be weird on would you be okay with that at home? We won't do like for 10 minutes or anything. I'm going to hijack Justin's talk here.
Okay, let's tell you what. Let's do it here at the end in a second.
Okay, yeah.
And that's how we'll end it.
Is that a good idea? Moderator. See how you just redirected me? That's so wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, do it, man.
Makes more sense. The only other thing I want to say about that is don't feel like you have to do one certain thing. You've heard already a bunch of different ideas, right? From a bunch of different people and how God interacts. God doesn't interact with everybody the exact same way. God is completely capable of interacting with you and your personality type and meeting you where you're at. He created you. And so He's actually pretty aware of how you would hear Him best or how you would hear God best, right? So be willing to be open to trying a bunch of different things
Yeah,
maybe early on
absolutely.
to kind of figure something out. Okay, last thing I want us just to maybe think on and quickly answer. We don't have to get crazy into this, but I do want us to be aware of this question, I guess. How does our intentional silent time with God impact those around us? So when I have intentional silent time with God, how does that impact the people around me? How, when you have intentional quiet time where you're interacting with God, how does that affect and impact the people that you're around? And maybe a tougher question to answer is, how does it impact them when we don't?
Yeah.
Right?
So obviously I can't speak for the people who are around me and how they feel, but I feel that when I have moments with God that I am way more patient and
You're just a better person. That's what I was thinking. Like, I'm just a better version of myself.
So I'm just not as snappy or impatient or
the opposite. I'm a worse version of myself when I don't
Right.
have it. So.
That's maybe true. Yeah, maybe that's one.
Yeah.
I know that somebody had said, again, in listening to a bunch of stuff about silence, was it actually makes us much more likely to be proactive in our relationships and interactions rather than reactive.
Oh, that's good.
And if there was somebody that was proactive in the way that they went about stuff, it was Jesus while he was here.
Yeah.
That guy wasn't just sitting around reacting to stuff.
That's so good.
I mean, he was very purposefully planning out what he did and why he was going to do it. And that he wasn't just doing that on the fly. I mean, that was a result, I have to believe, of those times that he intentionally went away to be with God on his own.
Yeah.
And to hear from God, and then to be in a much better place and to be a much better person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Because of that. And so just be aware that this isn't just affects, right, we're hearing the same narrative right now anyway with all the virus stuff. This isn't a thing that just affects you, though. Time on your own with God, silent time in conversation with God, silent time that's intentional. It doesn't just impact you, it impacts everybody around you if we are willing to take the time to do it.
Yeah.
All right, John, I want you to lead us through what this activity is.
Hey, man, I'm so glad, Justin. Thanks, man. So just connected me to two exercises, and some of these are really helpful for times when you just don't know what to do. And maybe you're out there and you're new to this silence thing, or maybe you need silence, but you're new to having a conversation with God in silence, right? I think there's a difference there. And so we want to encourage you to enter into silence, but then to see that connection with God as well. And these are two just kind of meditative exercises that help you have something to do to kind of think about your connection with God. The first one is actually, they're both called breath prayers, right? But the first one is based on the name of God. Do you know the Hebrew people, they wouldn't write God's name, it was a holy name, but his name was Yahweh, we pronounce in the English. But actually it's an unpronounceable name in Hebrew because it's the sound you make when you breathe. It's Yud, which is breathing out, and Ve, which is the sound you make when you breathe in. So think about it. Yud is breathing in, Ve is breathing out. I had them backwards because I'm not Jewish, right? I don't know how to speak Hebrew, but it's Yah when you breathe in and Ve when you breathe out. One of my favorite authors, Leonard Sweet, said the name of God is on your lips from the first breath you take in life and then the last breath you leave this world with. You say the name of God from the very first breath you breathe and the very last breath you breathe in this place. So just over and over again, breathe in, breathe out. You're saying the name of God. He's a part of you. He's in you. Right? So you can do that one, and we're going to take a minute to do this. The other one is Abba on the way in, I belong to you on the way out. Abba, I belong to you. Abba, I belong to you. And it's not something you say physically, it's something you think as you breathe in and out, right? They're called breath prayers, okay? So we're going to take a minute, either Yahweh or Abba, I belong to you. Silence on Living Hope Online, right? Ready, set, go. Good stuff.
Yeah.
That almost you want to come out of it whispering.
Mm.
As the presence of God settles on our lives. That's so good.
Guys, I don't know that there's a better way to end than kind of from that, right?
Yeah.
We're going to, I assume, somehow leave this up for a few minutes, right?
Yeah, I'm going to leave and run back and
Sure.
put some music up.
And
Actually, you know what? I'm not going to put music
yeah,
up.
let's leave it silent.
We're
Right,
just going
let's
to
just
give you the
mute it.
gift of
Yeah.
silence, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Hey, we would love to hear maybe what your experience was while you were doing that silent
yeah.
prayer. I would
What
love
did
to
you
hear
hear?
what you felt or what
did
you
you
thought,
think?
how you
Yeah.
how you experienced that
Came to mind.
Yeah, during that minute or while you continue to do it. And we thank you so much again. Please share this. If you think people could benefit from hearing this conversation or hearing the silence at the end of this conversation. Please do that. And thank you so much for your comments. Thank you so much for interacting. We love doing this with you, and we hope you guys have a great week. Find some silence the rest of this week.